When you play the Game of Thrones,
Subscribe and like.
you die. There is no middle ground.
All right, hello YouTube. Welcome back to the Grease Goblins YouTube channel. And you guys know I'm a big fan of Maegor's character. And the past, week or two, I've reread the beginning parts of Fire and Blood. And so I wanted to make another, video. I also haven't really done a what if scenario or even a video styled like I did for all of the 5 kings of how could Maegor the Cruel have won his war on faith and also Jaehaerys. Now, I want to clarify this more. I want to say, how could Maegor have won the War of Succession and kept his throne for a longer amount of time? Because I actually don't think it was all that hard. If Maegor would have made a couple different decisions, things could have gone differently. Now, I will say, I don't want to try and change Maegor's character too much. Very similar to the Robb Stark video I did, or Stannis' video on him winning the War of the 5 Kings. I don't want to make this where it's like a complete fan fiction where like the characters don't even behave how they are. But I will say with this one specifically, Maegor is kind of like Stannis. They're set in their ways. They are who they are. I have to manipulate his character a tad bit to try and get to a position in which he could have won. Because where I want to start out this video is after Aegon the Uncrowned is killed. This to me is at the moment where Maegor is right about at his most popular. I know he becomes not as popular after he kills Aegon, but the 7 Kingdoms were still, for the most part, behind Maegor. The issue is, okay, Aegon challenges Maegor for the throne. What is Maegor going to do? Like, Maegor had to fight Aegon, and that's just the only thing that was going to happen. Now, you could suggest Maegor shouldn't have took the throne to begin with. He should have just helped Aegon take the throne. There's a lot more that goes into that, and there's reasoning as to why Venia and Maegor would not have done that, but that's not where we're going to start. We're going to start here, because where Maegor's downfall starts is really Visenya's death. Now, I do want to talk about a couple things before we get to Visenya's death, because I think that you can justify a lot of things that Maegor does before her death. I've talked about that a lot. There are a lot of brutalities that Maegor should have reeled in, but a lot of the things that he was doing make a lot of sense. Going on this war on the faith, that's what he had to do, right? At this point, the faith was an open rebellion. They were, having Targaryens being hostage, basically, in Craigcall, for instance, with Aegon and Rhaena. They were completely an open rebellion. And so Maegor, to a degree, had to put them in their place. And the faith even bows down to Maegor when he goes to Old Town to begin with. So in a lot of ways, Maegor handles the faith quite well. It's only after kind of Visenya's death where things start to go wrong with that aspect of it. And Maegor doesn't do like what Jaehaerys does, right? Where Jaehaerys, he had an easier playing field because basically all of his opponents were beat down, tired of war. Like, Maegor paved the way for him to have a fairly easy way of dealing with things like the faith. And so that's what I kind of want to lay the groundwork for. So when we do I want to specifically start around the year 44 AC. Now, the first thing that has to happen is Tiana of the Tower needs to be gone from Maegor's side. And so I'm going to have Maegor do a little bit of a twist here. So when we do see that Tiana dies, it's actually much later. And she, again, we're not sure how much of this is true. Could have been a huge reason why a lot of the women that Maegor was sleeping with were not getting pregnant. I do think it was just that Maegor was someone that struggled to have children just in general. I think it's very clear that a lot of the Targaryens have issues with reproducing because of the incest. Aegon himself, who had 2 wives, only managed to have 2 children, and both of those children have question marks around them if they actually were Aegon's. I'd say more Rhaenys than Maegor. And you think about Rhaenys, Aegon loved Rhaenys, and they spent most nights together. How did they only have 1 son, and it actually took a while for that to occur? So I think it could be something like that, where Maegor, like his father, did not have the strongest seed, as, Jon Arryn would say. And so I think it's very likely that it was a mix of things. Tiana was also preventing any children that Maegor could have had. And that leads him to do a lot of things, right? Maegor, one thing we're going to have to just attack with his character is we have to have Maegor come to the realization that it's not the women around him that are the problem, outside of Tiana, of course. It's him. He can't really have kids. No matter how hard he tries, nothing goes right. So he has to take that accountability. It's something that we don't know. Maybe he could have taken that into accountability before he maybe killed himself, ending his own life towards the end of his, reign, all that. I don't know if that's truly the case, but that has to occur for this to go any further. He has to realize that after him, he will not have like an heir from his body, right? And so the other part of this is that Tiana is a major, major factor. And again, for you guys that don't know who I'm speaking about, Tiana or Tiana, I've been kind of saying her name like back and forth, but this is Maegor's one of his queens, his early queens, I should say. And so this character has to die. And this character is known for doing, it seems like black magic, very kind of Melisandre-like, but even more evil. She tortures people, kills people, and a lot of that is on Maegor's orders, but that has to stop. And so what I would propose is that when we actually see Alice Haraway actually struggle to give Maegor a legit child, because when she gives birth, it's a monstrosity, eyeless and twisted. I want Maegor to come to the realization that that happened because of Tiana, because of her magic and things like that. And she even kind of claims those things later on. So we're going to have Maegor figure that out here. And whether that it's because other people are telling him that, or him, himself comes to that realization, that has to occur, because a lot of the bad actions following are because of her influence on Maegor. She is very much a Varys kind of character to Aerys the Mad King. She makes Maegor overly paranoid, makes him, feed into his crueler sides and things like that. There's a reason Visenya never really liked Tiana. Now, Tiana does help Maegor come back to life, and there's a little bit of that's an interesting little theory about, after Maegor does his trial by 7 and becomes king but goes into a coma. I do, want to say here that she has to be out of the way. So Maegor takes her out. She's executed for crimes against the crown, whatever. And at this point, we're going to start a completely different branch off of the timeline. Maegor at this point realizes that he cannot have kids, or at least he really struggles to do so. And maybe he even blames Tiana for, cursing him and not allowing him to have children. He comes to that rationalization. And so in the main timeline, we see that he still calls Prince Viserys, which would have been Alyssa's next son, to court and makes him basically his heir and also his personal squire. This is a fantastic move, and I think this is something that Visenya definitely prompted. I want to make this clear. Viserys is older than Jaehaerys. So in terms of the line of succession, if you want to go off of, the male claimants, after Maegor was to die, it would then pass. If you're going male-wise, there are other women that are in front of Viserys. It would go to Viserys. So this is actually a very smart move. One, it gives you a hostage against Alyssa and her children. It gives you an heir. It kind of fixes a lot of those issues, right? And so I think this is a very good move. Now, is this going to prevent rebellion from, Queen Alyssa's line? No, but I think there are things you could have done here, because not only do I think that Maegor should have tried to broker who his next heir is and figuring all that stuff out like he does in the main timeline, I think he should have started trying to unite the Targaryens once again. I think he should have granted full pardons to the remaining Targaryens, to Rhaena, her daughters, Jaehaerys, Alysanne, Queen Alyssa, and I would have made that be some sort of peace. Now, would it have been accepted? It's tough, because you're in a situation where Maegor has now killed the husband of Rhaena, killed the oldest son of Alyssa, and in their words, usurped Aenys' line. And where I do think that's a possibility, and that maybe that Jaehaerys and Alysanne keep fighting on, I think you got to look at it and go, okay, but it makes Maegor look better. The reason that Maegor loses the war is not because of, his strength, ability to ride a dragon. It's because public perception turns against him. And so if Maegor is willing to end the bloodshed, is willing to make amends, and actually putting, Queen Alyssa and Aenys' line on the throne, it shows a little bit of, one side trying to reach out to the other. It gives a lot of good favor to Maegor. And so that's the first thing I would have done. I think I would have started to find a way to where you could unite the Targaryen claims, kind of the way that Maegor should have, or Maegor and Visenya were kind of doing, but take it even a step further, right? You could even have said maybe that Viserys would become Hand of the King, right? At some point, upon, at some age, he becomes Hand of the King. You could have had it to where maybe Jaehaerys was on the small council or some position like that. There's a lot of opportunities here that could have worked out for them for the best. Because the thing that's going to occur as we go further on here, you have the brutality of House Haraway, right? Maegor does some brutal actions that, again, are not looked upon fondly. It gets the public kind of against him. His unnecessary violence is what gets Maegor in trouble. And during this time, when he's dealing with the Haraways, you have, when he returns to King's Landing, Visenya dies. And this is a huge blow. Not only because Visenya, a very wise woman, also a great warrior. Even at this old age, she maybe wasn't so anymore, but she was somebody that had the ear of Maegor. She could, prompt him to do certain things. And so you could also go with the theory that just having Visenya live a few more years also would have allowed Maegor to continue to reign. But I'm going to allow Visenya to die because I think it's like, okay, now you're extending somebody's life out from natural, causes and all those things. We let her die. But hopefully in this timeline, Maegor is kind of on an upward spiral than he was a downward spiral, because Visenya's death very much impacts Maegor. No longer is Maegor really restricted, having somebody, actually giving him good counsel and things like that. It feeds into his worst impulses. Maegor, after this point, becomes more violent. He becomes more paranoid. In this situation, we're going to have him, yes, still be sad for his mother dying. Again, I am someone that thinks that Aegon was not a very present father for Maegor, so this is basically him losing his only parent. I think that would have been a tough, situation for him. But with that being said, I don't think it makes any sense for Maegor to then brutally torture Viserys. Viserys, in my opinion, is that point. It's that tipping point where Maegor goes from a king. You can understand a lot of his actions. You can see how he was manipulated, but even though he commits a lot of these cruelties before this point, you can understand where it comes from. Here, killing Viserys was just stupid. Just torturing him and killing him was dumb. Obviously, Viserys knew nothing about what was going on with his mother and his siblings, all of that stuff. I also do want to make a note. I slipped up and said that Jaehaerys and Alysanne were with Rhaegar. They were not there yet. They actually, again, I don't know why I said that, but they leave with Alyssa after Visenya's death. So again, even better, they're already in your kind of custody, more or less, with Visenya, but you try to deal with the issue while they're there, before a rebellion can even start. So I want to add that to that part of the video. Don't know why I said that. And so at this point, Visenya dies, Queen Tiana's dead. The only queens you really have left are Cersei Hightower. So at this point, I would be interested to see what Maegor would do in terms of wives. I don't think he remarries, just in terms of he can't really get any woman pregnant. So I don't think that he even attempts it at this point, if he's come to the realization that he can't. So we come to this point now where, what does Alyssa and her children do? Do they flee then to go to Storm's End? Let's say, just for the fun of it, they do, to try to keep it as close as it can. Maegor tried to reach out to them after, the war and all these things have gone on. It doesn't, do anything. Maegor still has Viserys as his heir, and he treats him well. I want to preference that. He treats Viserys well, right? And tries to do all of those things to make amends for Aegon's death. And so at this point, you're sitting in a very different situation, because the kingdoms at this time have no reason to really go against Maegor. Maegor is not committing a lot of violent actions. He's been seen as the person trying to make peace, and now Alyssa and her, other children have openly trying to, start this war up again. That's part of it. Now, the other part of it is we do have another part that's going on here that I think also has to just not occur. I understand why Maegor kills the builders, because he doesn't want the secrets to get out about all these passages and things. But at the same time, again, maybe reward them richly, try to make promises, but also threaten them a little bit. You can't kill all these people. It just looks a bad look. They all had families probably within the city. It creates this narrative about Maegor that he keeps wanting more violence, and it's never going to end. It's one of the reasons that he kind of has a downward spiral. Also, there is, Queen Cersei does die at this point, and it's rumored that Maegor, maybe had it ordered. I'm just going to have it where he doesn't kill her. Maybe she still dies to something else, but have it not be because of Maegor. But Maegor then, in 45 AC, would take the field again. He would go attacking the poor fellows. Now, we're not sure how many poor fellows were actually here, because it's also rumored that a lot of these people were small folk. I don't mind, Maegor taking out rebellion, right? This was a bit of a rebellion, and innocents did die in it, unfortunately, but the only thing I would change here is that Maegor just hopefully kills as few small folk as possible. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. So then when we get to the year of the Black Brides, which is the next most notable thing, into the next 47 AC. And I also want to point out, in 45 AC, when he starts doing this conflict, it's what turns a lot of the public against him as well, because of the mass killings of small folk. I would very much just have it where Maegor targets the leader and kind of doesn't get as violent with it. Take out the rebellion at its source and not deal with small folk or other people like that. So again, I don't think the Black Bride happens at all. I don't think that Maegor takes on a bunch of different wives. And if he even does, I think it would be more political. It would be trying to tie, people to him. Maybe he tries to make a peace with Rhaena. Like maybe still tries to marry her to unite the Targaryen claims. It's like what Visenya actually wanted to begin with. Lord Velaryon actually even requested this of Maegor. And I would think that Maegor could reach out to Rhaena. Don't order her to marry him. Again, I don't know. I don't think this would go well just based upon, Rhaena already being married to Aegon and having a good relationship with him, and Maegor being the person that kills Aegon. I just don't think that would occur, but you could have it where it's a political relationship where Maegor, offers Rhaena her children, again, protection, offers her daughters, high positions and to be well sought after and be well taken care of, offering maybe, good marriages down the future as well. Again, my purpose with the second half of this video is that I think Maegor needs to show the people and others a side of him that hasn't really been seen. They need to see the peacetime Maegor, not the wartime all of the time. And again, a lot of the stuff that would go down with a lot of Maegor's wives just wouldn't happen here. Just based upon the fact that I'm not going to have him marry, a bunch of different wives, again, pissing off the faith. I'm not going to have him do that, really. I'm not going to have, again, Lady Tiana, who kind of starts a lot of the crap during this time. She's going to be already executed at this point. Another person that the small folk don't really like, the people don't like Queen Tiana. So again, her being dead already would definitely help his cause. Now, we do see like there are some chances Maegor has of having children during this point. But who knows? Like maybe him and Rhaena do have a chance of a child. Who knows? I'm going to just go with, again, that they don't have any children. And so that gets us to almost the end of Maegor's life, where the lords have turned against him. Jaehaerys, Alysanne, and Rhaegar Baratheon are basically coming to King's Landing. The question would be, would Rhaena go to King's Landing to try and help them? Very possible, to be honest, very possible. And even if she does, I think you're in a weird spot because I don't think Westeros would back them at this point. The reason that Westeros backs Jaehaerys and the other Targaryens is because people don't like Maegor at this point. The taxes, the economy is terrible, and this would be fixed just blatantly because Maegor is not doing as much warring in my part of these events, of having him win these events. He's not warring as often. I would also have him like push back on all these taxes he's putting out and all these different things that are making people angry. I would have him being more viewed as someone that is trying to get peace in the realm instead of continuing war. Even if, Rhaegar Baratheon with the three dragons, with Rhaena, Alysanne, and Jaehaerys do go against Maegor, I think Maegor would be in a better position. I think he would have more of Westeros behind him, even with three dragons, which may give some pause. Maegor is a far more experienced dragon rider. On Balerion, who is a far more experienced dragon. I brought this up in my Maegor the Cruel, like, how did he die video. I don't even know if, again, Jaehaerys' camp would send all three dragons at Maegor at the same time. It would be extremely risky. And even if they did, you got to remember these dragons are extremely young. I mean, Balerion is, if you put the size of the other three dragons at this point together, they might not even equal the size of Balerion. And so I do question if Maegor could have taken down all three with just Balerion, and you also would have a larger force as well. So I don't know. You guys have to look at this. Again, in my way of Maegor winning, it would have to be the fact that Maegor actually wins, like that he wins this conflict and that's how it goes down. And again, we're not going to get too far into it. So at this point, he tries to unify the rest of Westeros, putting in his different policies. Again, basically the same thing that Jaehaerys does, right? The same thing that Jaehaerys does, he piggybacks off of Maegor. He's like, yeah, we're going to keep Maegor's, laws in there. And we're also going to do that. Okay, these laws that the Faith have do not apply to the Targaryens. Maegor would just do basically the exact same thing. And then we would go into Maegor's ruling phase. Now, regardless of the way this goes down, Queen Alyssa's last son would become king, and you would start a whole different thing. So we're not going to go too much further into it, but based off of the events we talked about in this video, that is the way I see Maegor potentially winning the war for the Faith in the war against Jaehaerys. It's one where it's hard to predict because you don't know how much the other side would have been willing to compromise. It's kind of the same issue of like Renly and Stannis. Like, Renly is someone that was never going to really compromise with Stannis, but if he did so, it would really help Stannis' cause. It's kind of the same idea here with Maegor. Like, how much would people like Jaehaerys, Alysanne, Queen Alyssa be willing to compromise with Maegor? If Visenya had lived even, a couple more years, how would that have dealt with the whole situation? So that's one of the most interesting parts about Maegor's reign is like how very minor things turn into very big things that could have been huge in his reign. But let me know what you guys think about Maegor winning his war, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.